Hello there, my name's Andy Tomalonis. I'm the managing editor of the New Bedford Light. And I want to thank you all for joining us tonight in what should be a really exceptional session of the chat. We're excited to have with us New Bedford Police Chief Paul Oliveira to talk about his plans for the department. And this week he's celebrating his 1-year anniversary as police chief, and it has been an eventful year. So I just let the expert here, Jack Spillane, take over and handle the questions.
Thanks, Andy, and welcome to you, Chief Paul Oliveira. Congratulations on completing your first year. I think it was June 9th that you were a full-time chief, and you were a couple months before that as the interim chief.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So congratulations. How has it been? Has this first year been what you expected, what you thought it would be like to be a chief?
I don't know really what I expected, but no, it's every day is a different challenge, which actually makes it quite interesting. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been a year. It's really gone by in a flash. I look over the course of my career, almost 30 years now, but I got to say, I think this year was by far the fastest year of my career.
Well, it's been an eventful year. Had being chief always been one of your goals? Did you always want to be chief and see how you could do running your own department?
Oh, not really. No, I mean, I always wanted to be a police officer. I knew that at an early age. And then really, I just started moving through the ranks over the years. And, it was always a challenge to reach the next rank. And that was intriguing. And here I am today as the chief. If somebody would have told me 20 years ago that I'd be police chief, I probably would have told me I'm crazy, but that's life, right?
Yeah. So you kind of have a down to earth, a give and take style. I've seen you around town in a couple meetings, and you seem to be very conversational, not an authoritarian. Would you say that that's your style, sort of a give and take? Yes,
that's really who I am. It's just me. I'm not good at really being anybody else but me. It's I just kind of say it the way it is. Sometimes I may not always say it the most eloquent way. But I'll just say it the way it is, and that's kind of who I am.
Okay. So, Chief, just before you took over, transparency had been an issue in the department. There had been some criticism of the previous chief for some high-profile cases. One was a shootout near Buttonwood Park in the daytime, another a shooting of a police officer's apartment in the public housing complex. But it seems to have calmed down. Have you made an effort to make sure information is being released in a timely way? Has that been a goal of yours?
It has. And I knew the concerns coming into the job, so I had that advantage. But there's no doubt that an effort was put on early on with my public information officer of putting out good, reliable information. I know that at times. I still may be accused, or the department's accused of maybe not putting out and as timely as what some would like it. But especially information when it first comes in, it's sporadic, it's unreliable, even when it's coming from our own officers. It's just the scene is too fresh. There's different accounts. We get different witness accounts. Sometimes they see a car fleeing. We put bolos off of that car, come to find out the car had nothing to do with it. So really, it's about getting the information, getting it accurate, and then getting it out. So yes, there's no doubt there's been an effort to try to get that information out to the community.
I think most of the media would understand that there's certain things that you can't say, that if you're doing an investigation, you don't want to give everything away. On the other hand, if something happens on a public street and some members of the public have seen it, seems like some information has got to get out there.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that. That's fair enough. That's a fair assessment. I think the community deserves to know, especially if there's something happening with they potentially could help us, or they should be concerned about.
Yeah. So one of the things that Chief that began right at the beginning of your tenure was there was some discrepancy between some numbers that the police department and the school department put out on numbers of arrests at New Bedford school systems. And then the original number was 76. And then there was a revised number that came down to 16. There was an explanation about some sort of disaggregating, but that, to my knowledge, that discrepancy has never been resolved. What was the discrepancy between the original numbers that the police department put out and the lower numbers later? This is for school arrests.
Yeah, so trying to think back on that, but yeah, I believe it got resolved. What happened was it was what the school, I think they were trying to find what numbers the schools reported to DESE. So we have nothing to do with DESE. I believe it's DESE, right? It's a state organization that the school reports to. And then we were asked, and then apparently, I believe what originally happened, there was something about school year, and then there was calendar year. So some of the numbers were reported as a calendar year, and then some were reported as a school year. And then some of the numbers the school reported had to do with school-based arrest. And I believe some of the numbers, when we originally did the request, we had, if I'm not mistaken, we had found all arrests on any school grounds. And that technically is not what the school department was required to report. So I think initially it was just miscommunication of exactly what was being done in the time frame. Because when the numbers were honed down, really analyzed and looked into further, those things all seem to match up, last I knew.
Mm. So you feel confident that going forward, when the reports are given to DESE this year, that the police and the school departments will both have the right numbers?
Yes, I don't know exactly what the school's reporting. I mean, like I said, we don't have that access, but if something happens on school grounds, we make the school department aware of it. That's the agreement we have with them to, so what they do on their end, what they're reporting or what they're required to report, I couldn't answer that. But yes, I'm very comfortable that we have a very good record keeping of, what's transpiring at our schools and what our involvement is there.
Okay. Also, at the very beginning of your tenure, we had the We Are the Prey report that was issued by a Boston group, and that came the year after the Black Lives Matter protests in New Bedford. There was some criticism of that report alleging that some of their numbers weren't accurate. They in turn said the numbers were supplied by the police department. Councilor Burgo said that his own brothers had been profiled, he felt, in the past by the department. What is your take on the issues of profiling? There are some in the community. The head of the NAACP has spoken out about this, about concerns about profiling of Black and brown youth in the city. What is your take on that?
Well, a lot of my career I've spent in the Internal Affairs Division, and obviously had a good bird's eye view of the complaints that came in and the stops that were being conducted. And I can tell you, from my many years in, we had never been accused of anything such as that. And it was disheartening to hear some of those great officers in our gang unit who were involved in many of the stops, because that's the nature of their job, working in these high crime areas, taking guns off the street, preventing the next shooting, protecting the people that live in those communities, to really be profiled as, conducting illegal, improper stops. I don't think I don't think the data proved it. They did crunch. They had a lot of data. We gave them every single one of our FIRs, which didn't all result in some of the stuff they said they resulted in. But I was responsive to the report. I thought one good recommendation they had recommended was that we could have a clearer policy on identifying gang members in the city. And I think that's one area that I think we had lapsed. Our policy wasn't up to date. Our database was not up to date. So we created a new policy, which I think is very inclusive. We had public input on the policy, and we've cleaned up that database. So I'm proud of where we are today as a result of that report. But like I said, but for a lot of it, I felt that there was harm done to a lot of our good police officers that I thought did a lot of good work that were really profiled in that report to make them look really looked down upon or being accused of something that they really weren't responsible for.
But you certainly wouldn't dismiss the concerns that people cited in that report, and people in the community during the Black Lives Matter protests and the discussions that ensued at the police commission the commission that the city had that looked into that. I mean, even the best departments would have officers that make mistakes now and then. No.
And I was only speaking on one part of that. So, no, of course, I was part of that commission. I try to attend many neighborhood meetings in this first year as chief. I've addressed many of the residents. I've done walk and talks in many of the communities that were mentioned in the report, or, in those high crime areas. So I want to ensure that every single police officer is obeying the law, respecting people's civil rights, constitutional rights. So yeah, that's definitely a goal of mine to ensure that. I'm not going to sit here today and tell you, oh, I know every single one of my police officers does, is done right 100% of the time, every single time. Police officers are human beings. They make mistakes. We got to hold them accountable when they make mistakes. But to think that there's some gross negligence out there occurring on the city streets, I don't buy into that. But I can also tell you, and I've told every community group and everybody I speak to, is that, if you do think you're being profiled or stopped or illegally searched, I want to hear about it.
Well, what about just racism in America? All of us have implicit biases. All of us have lack of understanding of mental health issues or developmental issues. Sometimes there isn't some possibility that New Bedford officers have systemic prejudices that are present in all of society.
Listen, yeah, police officers no different, like you said, than we're human beings, right? So it's society. So again, I would never say not here, not under my watch. No, of course not. We deal with the same issues. Our department is made up of, 250 men and women. So we come from all backgrounds. We come from all makes, kinds, religions, sexual genders. So it takes all kinds, and we're here. And that's why we have training, and we have implicit bias training now. The Mass Training Council offers that training yearly, and we continue to work on those skills. If we do have officers violating any type of policy, we want to know about it.
The revamping of the gang criteria, some of the criteria that people in the community questioned whether they really were things, wearing certain colors and different things that shouldn't have been on there. And then the fact that people were not notified if they appeared on a gang list. How was it that went on for so long that it was not addressed earlier?
Really, I couldn't really speak to that. It really wasn't it was just something that was entered into the computer, and the computer, it really was never purged. That's all. But there was no action taken as a result of that. It's just that information was listed under that person's name. Okay.
So Chief, there seems to be some lingering mistrust about the department's investigation of the Malcolm Gracia case from 2012, the 15-year-old kid who was killed outside of the housing development, Temple Landing. This past, I think it was January, just before you became chief, 4 months before you became acting chief, that they finally got rid of the high energy patrol initiative. That was 9 years after the Gracia incident. How that patrol initiative was a policy by which the police department members confronted individuals. The officers were told to do whatever they needed to do to deter criminal activity and would just stop people in the street. How was it that high energy patrol initiative went on for 9 years after the Gracia incident?
I think the directive was still in the book. I don't think that people were still reading that. Every new police officer coming on wasn't reading that directive to say this is how we patrol the streets in New Bedford. But yes, the directive still existed until it was removed. But I can't speak for my predecessors, whether, how long ago it was there or how long it had been there or why it hadn't been removed. But I don't think that was, I know it wasn't a yearly training where that was pulled out as a piece of training or as a guideline for new officers or some type of policing in New Bedford. Besides
So-
when it was
so-
established.
There is some feeling that investigation should be reopened. The district attorney has done it, the attorney general has done it. Should we give the U.S. attorney a crack at it? There really is some lingering mistrust in the community. As you know, the Superior Court judge found that it was not a legal stop when Malcolm Glacier was stopped. The officers did not have any reason to stop him.
About the details of that case, I don't know them. They were well before my time. I wasn't involved in the case. So I don't really have the details to speak upon them today. I know it's been investigated, like you said, through the district attorney's office. It's really, I don't know what else I could speak of on that case.
Yeah. So in February, you hired Jensen and Hughes, a consultant, to ensure that the department was, engaging in best practices and procedures. Why did you feel that was necessary at this time?
It was an opportunity for me as a new chief. I had walked in. Policing has changed so much, as we know, in the last 2 years. We were coming off in the middle of, really coming off the pandemic. Had come off police reform, and I just felt it would be a great idea to have a consulting group come in and kind of make a blueprint for the future of the department. It's really, I looked at it, it's really not for me, but to have some living document here to really talk about, the future of the New Bedford Police Department, where it should be going. Now like I said, we're in a whole different state of policing than what we were 2 years ago. We all know the words, as far as transparency, we're learning how to do more with less, right? We know there's a crisis in hiring and retention of police officers. Transparency is big. How can we be more transparent with the community? How can we build better trust with the community? We know we need better community engagement with our officers in our community, and we need better trust among our officers in the community and our officers. We need to tackle these problems together. The crime problems, social disorder. Until we all work together, the police cannot do it alone, nor can the community. And really, my goal of this consulting group is really to kind of give us that blueprint that will really put this department in good hands in the coming years. Like I say, well beyond my time for the future. I'll be clearly responsible, as chief. I want to put our department in a better place than where I found it. That's really my goal, right? And that's working with the community. So if this consulting group can get us in a better place and help me get there and help me get my, the future chiefs, then it's worth every penny.
Mm-hmm. But it was just an initiative that had to do with the beginning of your tenure, not so much concerns about the excessive use of force or the recommendations in the police commission after the Black Lives Matter protest. It wasn't connected to that.
No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that, I'd always rather bring in a consulting group or to me, any, whether it's private entity or public, to have a full rundown, right, or examination of your practices and policies before something bad happens. Because after something bad happens, it's too late. That means whether someone's lost their lives or there's a major lawsuit, there's no winner there. And then you bring somebody in now, and now you're working backwards. So I thought, we're in a good place. Let's get to a better place.
Policing, like every other profession, must change over the years. Is there a challenge when you have officers who've been on the department for 20 years and maybe the best practices thinking has changed during those time, to bring them along with the way they're teaching the best way to do things to the new recruits?
Sure. Yeah, and that's why we have 40 hours of annual training, and then obviously a number of trainings that go along with that every year. You always find better ways of doing things, and as you came on the job, the training's different now than what it was 25 years ago, and that's all about being progressive, right? If you don't move with the times, well, shame on you, right? And then you're going to be playing catch up. So, but yeah, it's always to get it back to your question. So yes, it is more challenging to train the older guys, right? Because they taught a different way. But you create a new policy or new training comes out, they go to it, and it's just worked into the new way of policing.
Yeah, that reminds me of your comment that one of your goals is to have a better relationship with the police unions, to have the communication better. Talk about that. Why you would like that?
I just think it's, it just creates a healthier environment. I've had many conversations with the union. We're really working towards the same goal. We may be in different lanes to get there, being the administrator, and then being the officers out there on the streets doing the job. But, we're here to serve the community. We're here to protect the community. We're here to make the community feel safer and be safer. So we all have the same goals. It's just we may have at times, me being in my role, them being in their role, we may have a difference of opinion. But I think until we have those, we need to have constant communication. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting with the union e-board tomorrow. And I've really opened up those lines of communication internally as well. Like you say, transparency. Transparency needs to happen right here within the department too. So I have made that a goal. And I'm just going to stick to it for as long as I'm here. Is continue that open line of communication.
Have you met with the new president, Chris Carter, yet?
Many times.
Dropped out there for a second. There was an effort. I don't know whether it was driven by the administration or the former chief to take the captain out of the union, and in order to have the command staff, I suppose, more independent of, when the goals of the union diverge from the goals of the department. Is that something you supported, taking the captains out of the union?
There was a lot more to it than that, as far as moving them out of the union at the time. There was a lot of things going on with the rank structure here and all that. So those conversations will probably be had in another day, in another term of maybe restructuring some of the administration positions.
Well, what is your philosophy? Is it better to have them in the union or not have them in the union?
Me as a police chief, it would be nice to have more of a command staff. So whether or not there's some captains that are in the union and others that aren't, is more of a command staff would be helpful. Because as it stands now, it's myself and the deputy, with only 2 non-unionized, and then everyone else is in the same union.
The same union.
They're in the same union.
Yeah, it struck me as odd. We had our reporter Anastasia Lennon did a nice story about a month ago, spotlighting the fact that there seems to have been a growth in resignations in the department the last 3 years, I guess. And something that caught my attention, where you attributed to the problem to the media, which you said, I think your exact quote was, "The media really beats us up," and the legislators who are putting a ton of restrictions. Those are your quotes, not mine. So, do you really believe that the number of resignations in New Bedford are the result of the media and the state legislature?
There's no doubt that I don't think there's any secret that people are leaving the police profession in the last 2 years in droves. The numbers, I think the last number that came out, there's been 40% increase in retirements. Came out early this year as a result of in 2021, 40% increase in retirements, 20% increase in resignations. So the numbers are there. And do they exist here in New Bedford? No doubt about it. We've never seen police officers just come in and say, "I'm going to go back to school to be a nurse. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go drive a truck. I'm going to, so it's there. The evidence is there. I'm not making that up, and I'm not the only police chief sounding the alarm on this. This needs to stop, because I'm telling you, if we can't start recruiting police officers, this profession is going to be in serious problems. And if you go look throughout the country, this is a crisis. This is a major crisis that we don't have the people or the interest of these young individuals to become police officers.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would disagree with you that it would be a crisis if people don't want to be police officers anymore. I think where you might have some eyebrows raised is attributing it to the restrictions that the legislatures put on in the wake of what many saw as some bad police behavior and the media for reporting on that behavior. I mean, it seems to me that the rise of cell phones and the cell phones documenting some of the behavior of police officers has caused concerns, not just in the media, but in the public at large. Do you really stand by that this is mainly a media problem?
Well, no, done some bad things out there, no doubt about it, and to hold those police officers accountable. But when the media categorizes every single police officer as bad, you know, we went from being good guys one day to being bad guys immediately, and we were portrayed that way. And if you don't see it on your side, I respect that. But as a police officer, someone who wears this uniform, yes, I saw it. I saw it happen with my own eyes, and I saw the anti-sentiment of police in the police profession. And that wore down the men and women who wore the badge, who wore the uniform. And it wasn't easy to take. It wasn't easy to come to work that whole time frame. So there was people that were ready to resign or retire or had another option to resign, and they took that option. There's no doubt about it. Because when you wake up and every single day you see that in your face, whether it's in the paper or on the TV, the anti-sentiment against you, it became personal and to a lot of police officers. And they were like, this is not what I signed up for. And they chose to leave the career, their career, to leave the profession.
So how would you think the media could report on these police camera incidents better?
The media doesn't have a right to report. It was just the whole negative sentiment of it, you know? So I mean, I think we've already changed. The police profession has done a much better job in the last 2 years of reporting or trying to really push out the positive stories. Because as we know, that those positive stories really weren't making the headlines. It was the negative ones, which I get it. The media has a right to report it. I'm not disgracing them for reporting it, but as a result of that, you have to admit, you know, we turned into the bad guys. We turned into the bad guys, and it took a toll on a lot of our officers.
What are some of the restrictions that the state legislature passed that you were concerned about?
More, they're still being hammered out through the post commission. But really, the disturbing thing, I think, with a lot of police officers and police chiefs was there was no collaboration. You know, they didn't ask for any police to make their decisions. They did them behind closed doors. They came out with a document and they said, you know, here you go live with this. We'll form a commission to police the police, but we won't have any police on it. It really, that was, I think, the sticking point with a lot of people. I don't know of any other profession, you know, that's either monitored or being, you know, someone set new guidelines for them without anybody from the profession having input. So that really was the kind of the disturbing part.
Yeah, you're dropping in and out from time to time, Chief. I don't know whether that's you're in the station and that you know the walls are so thick or something that we can't get you. But I'm getting most of it. But
Okay.
Occasionally you're dropping in and out. What about body cameras? Are you a supporter of body cameras as something that might protect both the officers and the public?
Yes. Yeah, I do think the body cameras is a good piece of equipment. I think the men and women would benefit from body cameras, no doubt about it. It's good. It's good for community trust, and I also think it's good for our officers to wear them.
So, with all this agreement, what are the chances that we'll get them? I know there's been various discussions as to whether the ARPA money, the federal government pandemic relief money, can be used for it. Are you in any discussions now to bring a plan forward for body cameras in New Bedford?
There's not an active plan as of now. It's a huge expense, as you can imagine, just because the equipment isn't that expensive, but the storage is obviously very expensive. And then you need at least a couple of people, the department our size, probably a couple of people to manage it with the freedom of information requests you're going to get out of it. So it's a significant It's a significant budget increase. So it's until either it's fully funded, I really wouldn't push for it here in New Bedford, because I've talked to enough agencies that sell them and enough agencies that have tried, incorporating small factions of their offices or try to do it in piecemeal. Just doesn't work. You need to fully fund it right out of the gate. So like you said, I think once this ARPA money gets straightened out, maybe it'll be funded through ARPA. I'm not sure. But obviously there would be some significant cost to it. But like I said, I would welcome them here in New Bedford, no doubt.
But there are no current discussions about doing it through one funding source or another in New Bedford.
There's been discussions, but not, obviously it's outside of my budget. So not necessarily, I haven't been privy to all of them, but no, I know there's been discussions. I've talked to some city councils about it. I've talked to the mayor about it. So there's discussions being had. I can assure you that.
Okay. There have been some claims recently that the complement of the department is down unreasonably low, and that we don't have enough offices, whether it's because of the large number of resignations or people not going into the profession. I don't think I'm breaking any confidences I was at that meeting the other night with some neighborhood people and you, is the department down to a worrisome level, or are we at a reasonable level?
No, we're down. There's no doubt we're down more officers now than I think we've ever been. We do have, I'm happy to say, we have 8 officers graduating from the academy next Friday. And we have 6 more that'll be graduating soon after. And we're trying to fill academy space now to get more officers in the fall. But, we have the same number of officers on the street, but it's a concern of mine because the lower the number goes, it creates forced overtime. And that's not something I like, is when we have to force our officers to work. It's just not, it's not healthy. It's not good for mental health and wellness. So it's a priority of mine to get this department back to the staffing levels it should be at.
Mm-hmm. So what is the full complement in New Bedford, and where are we at now in terms of numbers?
Oh, it's 260, and we're at about 220. Well, we have those 12 coming out. I'll put us still down about another 25 officers.
So where would you like to be at?
260.
260. Is there any chance of getting there the next year?
Not in the next year, no, unfortunately, but it takes a long time to hire a police officer. We have to wait for the civil service exam, and then it's a process to go through the background check, right? And to vet the recruit, and then they go into the academy for nearly 6 months. So it's a long, and then they come out on the street and they usually shadow for a month. So I wish it was a turnaround where I could say we'll be in full complement by the end of the year, but that's not realistic. My goal is, put a full court press on the hiring process now. We're talking about doing different hiring, coming up with some innovative ways of hiring. And really one of them is really to reach out to the public. And they're our best recruiters to believe in the profession again and say, this is a good job. And it really is. It's a great job. Like I say, this job has been so good to me. There's no reason why that these young people graduate high school and college shouldn't be looking at it as a profession. It is a good, noble job.
So Anastasia Lennon's story outlined how the salaries are a little lower in New Bedford. Of course, it costs less to live here than in Greater Boston. Is that a big factor in not having offices?
I don't know how much. I don't think it's a big factor. They take the civil service test. They're checking off where they want to work. So, if the salary was that low, they wouldn't come to New Bedford. So we're having officers apply. It's just that there's so fewer officers applying, taking the civil service exam. But yeah, if you could pay every cop $1 million, I would love it. But obviously that's unrealistic. It's not going to happen. But to say, all these other departments, the chiefs I talked to, they're all in the same boat, as far as obviously smaller departments are short, fewer officers. But like I said, this is a crisis that not only New Bedford's dealing with. I think, some smaller communities in the suburbs, there's been no secret that the officers are leaving some of the bigger or mid-sized to large-sized cities and going out to the suburbs to be police officers too. So that's happening too. So there's a number of factors. I wish I had the answer, because I'll tell you, if I could fix it tomorrow, I would. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time to get where we need to be. But really, that's really where I feel right now a lot of my priority needs to be taken, because the men and women that show up to work every single day, they deserve, not to have to be forced to work. They deserve to go home at the end of their shift. And that's, like I say, if that doesn't happen, I take responsibility for that. I got to do a better job of getting as many police officers on the force as possible.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to be an officer in the suburbs than in the city?
Well, it's, I've always enjoyed working in the city. So I appreciate working in the city. I've always loved this job in New Bedford. I spent a lot of my time in the drug unit, a lot of opportunity. I don't know, the suburbs never appealed to me, but apparently to some, they appeal. There's less room, I think, for advancement and maybe into some of those special assignments like a drug unit or detective unit. But for, you'd have to ask those officers that leave to go there. But, we've had them that have left to go to the smaller communities.
Yeah. You mentioned that you don't want officers to be too tired by working a lot of overtime. But in Massachusetts, especially because of the way the detail laws are written, officers have access to a lot of police detail work because of the traffic. Does the department have any policy for an officer who, when you read the annual reports on who makes the most money in the cities, sometimes you have patrolmen as the highest paid people in the city. Does the department have any policies if it thinks that an officer is working too much detail work, that he might be or she might be tired or not able to sustain that?
Yeah, so we do. We have a policy: you can't work more than 16 hours in a day.
In a day. That's a double shift.
It's a double shift. You can work a double, yes.
It is.
And and believe me, when you see those officers that make that much money, they're doing a lot of doubles, and they're working their butt off for it. They make a lot of money, but God bless them, because they.
Well, there's no doubt they're working hard for it. No one would debate that. But the question is, if you're working more than 1 or 2 16-hour shifts in a week, what kind of toll does that take on you?
Yeah, no, I agree. Is that best for your mental health and wellness? I'm sure it's not the best. You get 8 hours of downtime to get your sleep, and obviously, hopefully, you eat a healthy meal. But that's some officers choose to do that.
Yeah. I want to touch on the concept of qualified immunity. When we had the Use of Force Commission after the Black Lives Matter protests, one of the suggestions that people wanted, and it was not in the purview of the commission, was to eliminate qualified immunity, which gives officers immunity from being sued for some of their actions. Most professions can be subject to lawsuits. So what are the reasons we give police qualified immunity? Why is that necessary?
Because they're doing a very dangerous job, and they need to make decisions on the spot. Sometimes they make mistakes. And the thing is with qualified immunity is that if an officer makes a gross or clearly negligent error, he's not going to be eligible under qualified immunity. He's still going to be held liable. As you see, this has been happening throughout the country. Cops are being arrested, being charged, they're being sued personally. So qualified from being able to go out there and believe that they're making the right decision in making the right decision. And if something goes bad during that decision, or he's making the right decision, it gives him that protection. Without qualified immunity, there'll be some police officers that'll leave the profession tomorrow without feeling they have zero security of ever, having zero tolerance basically for making a mistake. So I think that's, it was a debatable subject for a while, but I think that's why it's kind of fallen off. You bring it up tonight. I haven't heard that discussed now a long time. I think a lot of people realized that it could potentially, and that's where stories started coming out, potentially crush the profession.
Well, I don't think it's just me bringing up LaSalle Hall, the head of the New Bedford NAACP brought it up in Brian Fraga's story at the New Bedford Light last fall as something he'd like to see. So I don't think it's, I think that there are many people, I understand the reasons that the police department would be concerned about their actions being second guessed very easily. It is a very high pressure profession. On the other hand, I think there have been so many reports of police misconduct that some people feel that officers are, or at least some officers feel a little bit too free out there. If we move on to the subject of the minority population in New Bedford. New Bedford is approaching with this census a minority majority community. That is, the majority of residents are Black or brown. The school system is already almost a minority majority school system. How important, in your opinion, in neighborhoods, particularly in the central parts of the city where minorities are the majority, is it for Black and brown officers to be very, very present in those neighborhoods?
Oh, no, I think it's very important. And that's why, and it's nothing to do with me, my predecessors. I think we've done a great job here of recruiting and have a very diverse police department. I think we do very well in that area. And we continue, to encourage all people to take the civil service test. And you'll see some of the recruitment efforts that we do in the fall that we're planning now will be, to recruit the Black and brown community. Females is another area where I'd love to see more females join the profession. So no, that's definitely a goal. I think, like you said, New Bedford's a very diverse community, and we want our police department to represent the community. So I'll continue to make sure that continues to happen.
Do you know? Can you give me a ballpark figure as to what percentage of New Bedford officers are Black and brown, Latino?
I give you a ball. I believe it's close to 30%. Last I knew, but I don't have the latest numbers, but last I knew was about 30%.
Do you know how that breaks down between Black and brown or Latino?
I do not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Well, do you know how many officers speak Spanish?
That I do not know.
Okay. Do you feel like it's enough, or we need more?
Use more. We do have a lot. I can tell you that. I know a lot's a vague number, but I don't have the number. But I can. But yeah, we're always encouraging that more. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit, Chief, about what training programs New Bedford has for officers to defuse a situation where you respond to a scene and someone is acting badly, but they may not, be someone who is a hardened criminal, but they're acting badly that evening. Is there methods that the officers are taught to de-escalate a situation?
Yes, and obviously, as we know, de-escalation has become a hot topic in policing. So yes, we're very happy to hear that they're putting a lot more time into the police academy on de-escalation methods, communication skills that we all realize are very important. In-service training now incorporates some of that to teach some of those qualities. And we'll be in the process by the end of the year is my goal to have every police officer trained in this de-escalation training, which is a national program sponsored by the Police Executive Research Firm, PERF. And it's basically de-escalation training and how to deal with mentally ill and how to deal with subject matters who are under duress and anxiety. And it really teaches officers, time and distance. If time is on your side, use the time. If you can create distance, create the distance. De-escalate that situation where, in the past, police officers were often taught, an armed suicidal male, confront them and, disarm them, right? And really no one else was in harm's way. And really now the training's gone the opposite way. So this is nationally recognized training. There's going to be a significant cost to it. I do have recently got the commitment from the mayor's office that I'm going to be getting the green light to provide that training to every single one of my offices. So by the end of the year, all my offices will be certified in that training. So I think that'll be a huge accomplishment. I'm not going to say we're going to be the first by no means to have every one of our offices qualified or certified in it, but we'll definitely be on the forefront of that. So that'll be a good thing.
That just sounds like the best news I've heard tonight. It sounds like there is a change in police philosophy. I remember when I first started as a reporter, and that's 30, 40 years ago, they talked about controlling the stop, especially when you go to a traffic incident, to control the stop. Do not, because of the unpredictability of some members of the public, you want to control everything. And that's understandable, but you wonder if people are taught these de-escalation techniques. What do you mean by distancing? What does that mean?
We create distance, instead of closing the gap or closing that, confrontation area of approaching an armed suspect who's really, it's not, if the armed suspect has somebody at hostage or at gunpoint, right? Things change, strategy change, different tactics are going to be used. But if you have just a suicidal male or a mental health situation, what you want to do is create that distance with that person. Don't get into their space. And whether you start de-escalation that situation, we have clinicians now that we ride along with. We can get a clinician to that scene, work on that communication. If it means that we have to call a hostage crisis negotiator in, we can call them in now, because now we've created distance, a safe zone, and now time is on our side. So if it takes us 8 hours to disarm that person, to talk them to dropping the knife or the gun, we'll do that. And that's it's a different way of policing than it was 25 years ago, I can tell you that. So, and it's obviously, it's just the fact that we have clinicians riding along with police officers now. 25 years ago, that was unheard of, to think that we have civilians driving around police officers in the same cruiser, right? And now they're, sure enough, right, they're showing up to these calls with us. I mean, it's been a great asset partnership.
And the plan is for every member of the department to undergo this training.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
We've already sent a few, actually. Probably, we got a handful, probably about 25 trained so far, but yes, by the end of the year, do everybody. Yep.
That's great. We have a question that's come in from Susan Lee. She wants to know about the pipeline for young people of color, and especially young women, to go into policing. Are there intern or cadet programs starting in high school to do that?
We do. So we have an internship. We work closely with Greater New Bedford Folk, because they have a law and legal department there, department. And so we do, and I've already been in contact with Volk about getting. So the problem is with COVID, it kind of restricted our internships in the police department, because we really had shut down all our buildings, like everywhere else. So we weren't allowing people in. But I'm already having good conversations with Volk to get that up and running with high school students with internships. So the more interns that we can bring in, engage, show them the police department, show them what we do, teach them a little bit about the profession, get them interested, we're all for it. So we will be sure to put together a more organized program come before the school year, and then going into the schools, and then also being much more vigilant on recruiting. Last week, I talked to a video company about even coming in and doing a recruitment video for us prior to the next test. We're hoping there'll be another civil service test next year to encourage people to take the civil service test. So yes, you will be seeing, I can assure you, you'll be seeing, like I said, we're very vigilant with our efforts to recruit.
How many young women, how many women do we have in the New Bedford Police Department right now?
I not enough, I'll tell you that number. Not enough, but I don't know the number. You kind of caught me off guard with some of these questions with numbers. I don't, but I can get you those numbers. I mean, it's not something I just don't have.
I'm not asking for a specific number, but we have 200 and would you say 220 officers right now?
Yep.
So are there 50 women? Are there 25?
About 25.
25?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, so I've been around that number, yes, that seems
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, what is preventing more women from going into policing? Because I think some departments do a little better than that, right?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's nothing here that I know of. I mean, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, we clearly don't have enough. I'd love to have more. So, we'll be sure that that's, like I said, that's part of our recruitment too, is to encourage young women to apply. But at most of the academies we've had recently, there seems to be at least one female graduating in all of them. So that's been encouraging.
Great, great. You had said one of your goals is to double down on the efforts to improve the department's relationship with the large Mayan community we have in New Bedford. These are people who have been discriminated against in their home countries. Now they come to New Bedford. They work in the seafood houses. A lot of them, because they're undocumented, have been traditionally afraid to call the police or have relationships with the police. What are you doing to try to improve that?
Yeah, so there's a serious barrier with speaking with them, and I'd gone out and spoke to a number of them early on after becoming chief, and realized there's really a lack of trust with the police in that community. Back where they live, the police departments are corrupt. They steal from them, they rob from them. They don't call the police for anything. They avoid the police basically in their culture. So after learning this, we said we got to work on this. So I've appointed 2 Spanish speaking officers to work as liaisons within the community. I gave them both department issued cell phones, business cards. So they go out now, they attend their meetings. We've had a couple events that the police department's sponsored last Christmas. We did an event with McDonald's, breakfast, Santa Claus with toys, and we had hundreds and hundreds of people and kids. We gave away gifts to the kids from Central American population. And we're now planning another event down the south end to go meet them after Mass at church and kind of have that same Q&A with them, help them navigate the criminal justice system and introduce these officers to them, make sure they're aware that they're there for them, so that it's really their resource where they can call them if they have a question about the criminal justice system or a law question or a legal question, or if they've been victimized, someone they can call and feel comfortable with reporting it to.
I'll keep on with my hard questions. Do we have any Mayan officers, and how can we get some?
No, we do not. And that's a great question, because that's really something I'd love to see in the future, is to get, have officers from the Central American population. That'd be great. So I think it's going to be sooner than later. I think it's just a matter of time. We'll get them into the system, no doubt.
It just seems to me that having an officer that looks like you goes a long way. And as you know, the Mayan people's first language is not even Spanish; it's Quiche. And I don't. What do you do when you need a Quiche translator?
So that becomes a little difficult if they don't. But normally, from what I understand, we've been able to, speak Spanish, and it's been able to, get at least enough conversation to go. We are fortunate where these officers have built up some working relationship with other members in that community, where we do have translators, access to call these other people if need be, if there was that much of a language barrier.
Yeah. Do you know Adrian Ventura personally?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yep. I've gone down there, met with him a number of times, and our officers are regulars at his place there on the avenue, and meeting with sometimes when he brings in some members from that community. Yep.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Adrian runs a workers center on Acushnet Avenue and deals with a lot of workplace issues that the community has in various of these very often grimy blue collar jobs that some of the immigrants have. I wonder if we just touch base on something from this meeting the other night about street people in the city. It's summertime and we're seeing more of them. Have you seen an uptick in homelessness, or people who are not homeless but are just on the street a lot since the pandemic was over? Has there been an uptick this summer, or is that my imagination?
Yeah, I've seen an uptick. No, I mean, is there a homeless population out there? No doubt about it. But I wouldn't say there's necessarily an uptick. Obviously, downtown during the day, we know a lot of the vagrants do kind of congregate by the bus terminal. So that's been an area of concern of ours. We put a lot of time into that down there with our social service providers. Fortunately, here in New Bedford, we have many social service providers that kind of offer all different types of service, depending on whether it's mental health or food or housing. So we've had a lot of conversations trying to get as much help to those people as possible, those who want it.
You mentioned that, and I was surprised to hear this, that don't be afraid to call 911. I always thought you really should reserve 911 for an emergency, but if you have a problem with a person on the street, or you see someone whose behavior is just unacceptable, that you shouldn't be afraid to call 911.
Yeah, back in the day, I think when 911 was, originated, it seemed like all police departments kind of had two working numbers. They'd say, oh, here's a business line and here's a 911 strictly for emergencies. But all those calls come into the same call center here at headquarters. So I just tell people it's a quicker number, it's an easy number, just call 911. You're going to get the same exact operator. And then your call, when it comes in, will get prioritized. So even if you're calling for something that may not be a priority one call, once the call gets entered, if there's a major car accident with injuries and you're calling about a drunk disturbing, yeah, obviously the officers in that area are going to go to that car accident first. So the computer will prioritize that call and really just leave it up to us to prioritize it. Just get the call in, call 911, get it reported, and we'll respond.
But the reason for reporting it is so that it can be documented how frequently this problem is happening, or what is the reason for reporting these lower level things?
So a lot of policing now is through data and through analytics. And so if we have issues, hotspot policing is clearly hotspots. It's basically where our officers are spending most of their time, because that's where a lot of their calls for service are. So if someone's having a particular problem in a certain neighborhood, it's important for us to report that crime to us, because then that's where we know we need to spend more time, to help solve that problem, or maybe send a community policing officer there and find out what the underlying issue is to resolve it permanently. That's really what we try to do. The whole community policing method is really to have our officers engage the problem and solve the problem if possible.
My hardball questions, and I haven't pulled any punches. I hope this wasn't too unpleasant for you. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think is important that I should have asked you?
No, I think you covered it all.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you regret doing this?
You don't want the answer on that. No, I appreciate you bringing me on. Like I said, the tough questions. I mean, that's my job, and like I said, I might not be the most eloquent speaker, but I try to, I speak the truth, and I'm open to conversations, and if people have questions or concerns, they can call me at any time and really come see me.
Okay, so my clock says I still have 2 minutes here. Is there any final message you want to give to anything that you think is important this summer you'd like to emphasize?
No, I just really, my goal is really to really engage the community, and my office is to engage the community. The New Bedford Police Department isn't about me. It's about the men and women. And that's how I want, to judge me by what the men and women do out there and how they engage the public and the relationships they build. Because really the issues we have here in the city, the police, we can't solve them without the community's help. And we need that positive engagement. We need their trust. And we'll continue to work on that, to build that so we can solve these problems.
Well, thank you very much, Chief. This has been Jack Spillane with the New Bedford Lights chat, and we've been speaking to Chief Paul Oliveira for the entire hour about his first year in office. Thanks very much, Chief.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Have a good night.